Good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here to talk to you about Spark. I'm about to tell you how Spark is going to change learning from a system that waits for children to fail to a system that understands how each child learns, cater them with what works, and by doing so, saving the money of not acting in time. So if you're ready, I'm going to share with you a small story that kind of explains the reason why I'm here today. About 6 years ago, I was in charge of leading a research initiative. We wanted to measure brain activity as children perform executive function tasks. We wanted to understand how different children reacted to the same task. And what we found was kind of astonishing. As you can see, here we have two examples. We have Alan and Boris. Same age, same task, but their brains work very differently. Let's look at Alan. As you can see, the brain activation on the EEG shows a prefrontal activation. On a behavioral level, you can see that Alan's performance was very focused and he could maintain performance over time. On the other hand, we have Boris. Boris' cognitive pattern was much more diffuse, as you can see here. He made more enforced errors, and he showed signs of cognitive fatigue much earlier. What we were observing on a behavioral level closely matched to what we were observing on brain activity. And when we later contrasted those observations with what parents and teachers described, they were very consistent in how those two kids were experiencing learning in everyday life. And this was kind of eye-opening for me, because what we see in the classroom is only the surface of the underlying processes of what happens when a child learns. But our systems are not designed to detect those differences early. Instead, most educational systems still operate on a way-to-fail model. Children are only identified after years of underachievement and behavioral disruption, and even then, identification is highly variable and often imprecise. So as a result, many children are identified too late, but most of them are never identified. And this is not a marginal problem, because an estimated 300 million children worldwide are affected by specific learning difficulties, with a long-term economic cost of about $10 trillion in long lifetime productivity in the US alone. So neurodevelopmental conditions go far beyond academics. These children are more prone to mental health issues, addictions, and even behavioral disruption that ends up with intervention of the penal system. Just to give you US statistics alone, 1 in every 4 adults in the penitentiary system and almost 1 in every 4 adults experiencing homelessness screen positive for cognitive impairment. So the question is, do we really need to wait for school failure to become visible before we act? Science tells us no. Our thesis is based on the fact that the early brain may exhibit early neurodevelopmental signals that can pinpoint to specific risks that are related to learning difficulties. Using artificial intelligence, we can build a model and a map between those early neurodevelopmental signals and behavioral proxies, building screeners and tools that can identify those risks and enable early and precise intervention. And the good thing, it gets better over time. So you might be asking yourself, what does this mean? Let me give you a proof of concept. This is an inspiration from JP. He told me to give an example, so I'm going to give you an example now. A 2025 study found out that individuals with ADHD, while performing sustained attention tasks, showed sleep-like slow waves. The same waves you and I show while we are sleeping. Like, wow. And when those waves appear, more attention lapses, slower response rates, lower performance. That is the type of bridge we care about. Because once we find the neurodevelopmental signature, then we build a child-friendly task that stresses that specific cognitive function, and by doing so, we enable the breakthrough. So why now? Because for the first time, the capability stack that was needed has matured. First, neuroscience has made it increasingly feasible to detect and interpret those neurodevelopmental signatures. Then digital tools can provide high-resolution data sets on how each child learns, and artificial intelligence allows us to model those two connections, neurodevelopmental signatures and behavioral data sets, to create Spark and generate this change. But this won't happen alone. Why is that? Because academia is fragmented and seldomly designed to create translational infrastructure. Venture-backed startups cannot justify the high-risk pre-commercial research. Educational markets prioritize engagement over discovery, and clinical pathways are too costly to regulate it and too late. That's why philanthropy funding matters now. Because even though the capability is already there, there is no natural actor with both the mandate and incentives to make this breakthrough. That is what Spark for, to fill that gap, to create that breakthrough. But to do so, we need an alignment of many stakeholders, and that network is not theoretical. I have been building it for the last 15 years. Our research and measurement partners provide the scientific rigor and validation. We have government partnerships with Uruguay, Chile, Mexico, and various US states, providing the deployment and adoption of these tools to more than 6 million children. Just to give you a piece of information, in 2 months, in August, we will be deploying part of these tools in the US, reaching more than 60,000 children in 2 months. And that's what risks the project. We're not only doing the science, but also the translational work. We're building the bridges for adoption, sustainability, and time. And that's why I also believe I'm well suited to lead Spark. Because for the last 17 years, I have worked in the public and private sector, building tools and doing the discovery and the scientific work of the tools that are needed to reach those kids. And my tools have reached more than 10 million beneficiaries so far. So we're raising 20 million to build Spark through the next phase, through discovery, translation, and validation, to make sure that we can make this transformation possible. We're not asking philanthropy to fund another app. We're asking philanthropy to fund the canonical data set that will allow us to make this transformation possible. Because if we're successful, 5 years from now, we will have screened more than 10 million children. We would have saved more than 5 years in the identification timeline, and we would have made sure that we understand each child, how they learn, what they need, and when they need it. And when we do so, we can make sure that every child gets what they deserve, a chance to succeed. Thank you very much.